The phone rang at 8:47 on a Tuesday morning, and I almost let it go to voicemail. I was sitting at my desk at the warehouse going over a supply order that had come in wrong for the third time that month, coffee going cold. A stack of invoices on my left that I hadn't touched yet. The kind of morning I'd had 1,000 times before over 38 years running Harmon Building Supply. My name is Gerald Harmon. I'm 62 years old. I've got 2 warehouses outside Nashville, Tennessee, a good crew of people who've worked for me for years. And until about 4 months ago, I thought I had a pretty clear picture of what my life looked like going forward. The number on my phone said unknown. I picked up anyway, Mr. Harmon. A woman's voice, quiet, careful, like she was choosing every word before she said it. This is Sandra Colby. I photographed the engagement session for Philip and Nadine last month. I remembered her professional woman, mid-40s, organized. She'd spent 3 hours with my son and his fiancée at Centennial Park on a Saturday afternoon. Philip had shown me some of the preview shots afterward. They looked happy. The photos were good. I need to see you, she said, in person, alone. Please don't say anything to Philip before we meet. I set down my pen. What's this about? I can't explain over the phone, but I found something in the photos, Mr. Harmon, something serious. A pause. I'm sorry to be calling you like this. I really am. I told her I'd be there the next morning. After I hung up, I sat at my desk for a while without touching anything. The supply order didn't seem very important anymore. That evening, I drove home to a house that felt bigger than it used to. My wife, Carol, passed 6 years ago, and I'd never quite figured out how to make the place feel right-sized again. My younger son, Leonard, was living in the guest room with his girlfriend, Connie. They'd moved in about 3 years back after Leonard lost his apartment lease, and the temporary arrangement had stretched out the way those things do. They were decent kids, a little too comfortable maybe. Leonard had a habit of letting things slide financially and counting on me to catch him when he landed. I didn't hold it against him. He was 27 and still figuring things out, but it meant the house was never really quiet that night it was. Leonard and Connie were out somewhere. I heated up leftover soup and sat at the kitchen table and thought about Sandra Colby's voice on the phone. The way she'd said something serious. The way she'd said I'm sorry before she even told me what she was sorry about. I thought about Philip, 32 years old, structural engineer, steady and serious in the way that made me proud from the time he was a teenager. He'd been with Nadine Voss for 2 years. She was 29, worked in marketing, sharp and confident. I'd had some small reservations about her early on, the kind of vague feeling you can't quite name, but I'd told myself that was just a father being protective. Philip seemed happy. That was what mattered. I went to bed that night and didn't sleep much. Sandra's studio was in East Nashville, a converted brick building on a side street with her name on a brass plate by the door. She met me at the entrance at 9 in the morning and locked the door behind us. She had coffee ready in her editing room. I didn't touch it. She sat down at her computer and I stood behind her chair. Mr. Harmon, I went back and forth about calling you for almost 2 weeks, she said. I want you to know that. But I kept asking myself what I would want if I were in your position. Show me what you found. She pulled up the engagement session photos first. Philip and Nadine at the park, laughing, looking at each other the way people do when they're happy and they know someone's taking pictures. Nice photos. The kind you'd frame then. She opened a different folder. I arrived at the hotel early that day to test my lighting setup, she said. I was working near a window that looked out over the parking lot. I was adjusting my equipment, not paying attention to anything outside, and I captured this. The image came up on screen. Nadine, standing in the hotel parking lot 90 minutes before the engagement session, pressed against a man I had never seen before in my life. This wasn't a hug between old friends. His hands were in her hair. Her arms were locked around his neck. The engagement ring Philip had saved up 4 months to buy was on her left hand. Visible in the frame, I didn't say anything for a moment. I just looked at it. There's also footage, Sandra said. She opened another file. 23 seconds from the hotel's exterior security camera, different angle, same scene. She had the metadata pulled up alongside it. Timestamp GPS coordinates, file verification data. I didn't go looking for this, she said, but it's real. And it's documented. It would hold up anywhere. She handed me a flash drive across the desk. Everything on it, photos, footage, full technical records. I took it, closed my hand around it. You did the right thing. I said, thank you. I drove back to the warehouse, but I didn't go inside. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for about 20 minutes, flash drive in my shirt pocket, watching my employees move around through the window. Normal Tuesday, deliveries going out, a contractor picking up drywall, my foreman Earl walking the yard with a clipboard. Everything looked the same. Nothing was the same. I had one rule going forward. I would not say a word to Philip until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Not because I doubted what I'd seen. The photos were clear, the footage was clear, but I needed the full picture before I put that in front of my son, because once I did, there was no walking it back. I called a private investigator that afternoon, a man named Marvin Sutton, 30 years in the business, based out of Brentwood. An attorney I'd used twice for contract work had recommended him once in passing. I tracked down his number, called him and told him I needed to identify a man in a photograph and find out who he was and what his connection was to a specific woman. Marvin didn't ask a lot of questions. He said, "Give me 3 days." He called back in 2. The man in the parking lot was named Clifford Baxter, 35 years old, originally from Savannah, currently living in Atlanta, Georgia. He and Nadine Voss had been together for over 2 years. Shared lease on an apartment in the Buckhead area. No gaps, no recent break, no signs of a separation. Marvin had utility records, a lease document, social media connections going back 26 months, and 2 photos of them together at a restaurant in Atlanta, taken 5 weeks before the engagement session in Nashville. I paid Marvin $800, thanked him, and sat with the file he'd sent over for a long time. Nadine was engaged to my son. She was wearing his ring. She'd let him plan a wedding, let him put down deposits, let him tell his friends and coworkers and his whole family that he was getting married in the spring. And she had a man in Atlanta she'd been with the entire time. I kept asking myself what she actually wanted, because if she had someone else, why go through with it? Why put in this kind of effort? The answer came to me the next morning at about 4 a.m. I was sitting in the kitchen with coffee I didn't need, and it just landed. Plain and simple. The wedding, the gifts I'd already committed to paying for the reception venue, the catering, the photographer. That total was sitting around $42,000. Philip's colleagues and friends alone would be bringing checks and envelopes. My business contacts, people I'd known for 20 and 30 years, would be there. Eugene Caldwell, my longest business partner, had already told me he was planning something generous for Philip. A wedding in Nashville with 180 guests wasn't just a party, it was a collection event. I opened my laptop and pulled up everything I could about Nadine's financial background. Not much publicly available, but enough. She'd moved to Nashville 3 years ago. No property, no significant assets on record. She worked a marketing job that paid decently but not well. Then I remembered something Eugene had mentioned to me about 6 weeks back. Offhand, casual. He'd said something about receiving a proposal letter from the Harmon family regarding a joint supply arrangement, and he'd assumed I'd sent it through Philip as a way of getting him involved in the business. I'd been confused at the time but brushed past it. We'd moved on to something else and I'd forgotten about it. I hadn't sent any proposal letter. First thing in the morning, I called Howard Tillman, estate and property attorney, 54 years old, downtown Nashville. I'd used him once before for a lease dispute and trusted his judgment. I told him I needed to meet that day if possible. He had an opening at 2. His office was clean and serious. 19th floor, good view of the city. I laid everything out on his desk. Sandra's flash drive, Marvin's report, and what Eugene had told me about the proposal letter. Tillman listened without interrupting. He made notes on a legal pad in small, even handwriting. When I finished, he asked me 2 questions. Did I have a copy of the letter Eugene received? And had I looked at any joint financial accounts opened in connection with the upcoming wedding? I didn't have the letter yet. I told him I'd get it from Eugene. On the accounts, Tillman made a call to a contact at the bank where Philip and Nadine had opened a joint account. It took about an hour to get the basic information back. The account had been opened 4 months before the scheduled wedding date, right around the time Save the Dates went out, right around the time gift registries and planning conversations would have started. Tillman set down his pen and looked at me across the desk. "Mr. Harmon," he said, "what you're describing, if the business letter turns out to involve a forged or unauthorized signature, is civil fraud. Between that and the documentation you have grounds for legal action." He asked me what I wanted to accomplish. I told him 2 things. I wanted my son protected, and I wanted everything I'd built for 38 years protected too. Tillman nodded. He pulled a fresh legal pad from his drawer and said, "Then let's start at the beginning." Eugene Caldwell forwarded me the letter the next morning. I read it twice standing at my kitchen counter before I send it to Tillman. It was written on what looked like Harmon Building Supply letterhead. Professional, formatted correctly with the right address and logo. The signature at the bottom read Philip Harmon. It proposed a joint purchasing arrangement between Harmon Building Supply and one of Eugene's smaller vendor contacts, framed as an expansion initiative. The tone was confident. The language was close enough to how I write that Eugene hadn't questioned it. Philip hadn't written it. I knew his signature. This wasn't it. Tillman confirmed it by end of day. He'd had a handwriting comparison done against documents. Philip had signed on file, not a match. The letter was a fabrication sent under a false signature to leverage the Harmon name with one of my business contacts. I sat with that for a while. Sandra's photos showed me who Nadine was in her personal life. This letter showed me something else. She hadn't just been deceiving Philip. She'd been working her way into the business network, using the engagement as cover. using my son's name to open doors she had no right to open. Tillman recommended we move on two fronts simultaneously. First, an irrevocable trust covering all my assets. The warehouses, the property, savings, investment accounts, everything transferred into professional management with distribution instructions, set by me and protected from outside challenge. Second, a civil fraud claim based on the forged letter and the misrepresentation of authority. He said there was one more thing we could do before filing a meeting. Invite Nadine in under a neutral pretense and put the evidence in front of her directly, with Tillman present as a witness. Let her respond on record before anything went to court. I asked him what pretense would work. He said the simplest ones always do. A welcome to the family gesture. Paperwork for a small property gift, the kind of thing a father-in-law might offer before a wedding. His assistant would make the call, keep it warm and routine. I told him to set it up. The trust paperwork took most of the following week. I went into Tillman's office 3 separate times to sign documents and review transfer records. His estate specialist, a woman named Pauline Mercer, walked me through each section without rushing me. She was thorough and patient and explained things in plain language, which I appreciated. By the time we were done, everything I had built over 38 years was protected. The warehouses, the house, the accounts, all of it held in a structure that my sons could benefit from under terms I had set, terms that couldn't be manipulated or challenged by someone who had married into the family with other intentions. I felt something ease in my chest when I signed the last page. Not relief exactly. More like the feeling of finally putting something down that you'd been carrying too long without realizing it. Meanwhile, at home, things were quiet in the way that felt uneasy. Leonard and Connie went about their routine, work and evenings in front of the TV, the occasional dinner where everybody talked about nothing in particular. Leonard asked me once if everything was okay, and I told him it was just some business things I was working through. He accepted that. He wasn't the type to push. Nadine had texted me twice that week. Once to ask about the seating arrangement for the rehearsal dinner, once to share a link to a wedding favor she and Philip had chosen. I replied to both with short, normal answers, nothing that would raise a flag. Philip called on a Thursday evening. He sounded good. Talked about a project he was finishing up, asked how the warehouse was running. Normal conversation. I listened to his voice and kept my own steady and thought about the kitchen table where I was going to have to sit across from him in a few days and show him things no son should have to see about someone he loved. I'd been in hard conversations before business disputes, the talk I had with both my boys after their mother died. Moments where you know going in that what you're about to say is going to change something permanently. You don't get used to those, you just learn to do them anyway. Nadine arrived at Tillman's office on a Wednesday at 2 in the afternoon. She was dressed well, relaxed, the kind of composed that comes from confidence. She shook Tillman's hand and sat down across from him and smiled at me when I walked in a moment later. If she was surprised to see me there, she didn't show it. Tillman opened a folder on the table between them. He placed the letter first, the one sent to Eugene Caldwell under Philip's name. He told her we had the original, that we had confirmed the signature was not Philip's, and that we had documentation of the discrepancy. She looked at it. Something shifted in her expression, quick and controlled. She said it had been a misunderstanding, that she'd been trying to help with the business, that Philip had known about it. Tillman placed Marvin's report next to the letter, the lease records, the photos from Atlanta, Clifford Baxter's name at the top of the page. The room went very quiet. She didn't say anything for almost a full minute. Tillman didn't fill the silence. That was something I noticed about him. He was comfortable letting a quiet room stay quiet. He just sat there with his hands folded on the table and waited. Finally, Nadine said the thing with Clifford was over, that it had ended months ago, that she'd made a mistake and she dealt with it, and it had nothing to do with Philip or their future together. Tillman slid one more page across the table, the bank records showing the joint account opened 4 months before the wedding date. He explained in the same calm voice he'd used for everything else that the timing suggested a degree of planning that was difficult to reconcile with the explanation she'd just offered. She looked at that page for a long moment. Then she looked at me. I didn't say anything. I decided before I walked in that I wasn't going to argue with her, or accuse her, or give her anything to push back against. Tillman was handling it. My job was just to be there and to watch. She said she wanted to talk to Philip before anything else happened, that he deserved to hear her side of it. Tillman told her that was her choice to make, but that it didn't change the legal situation regarding the business letter. He explained the civil claim, the grounds, the likely outcome if it went to court. He told her the demand was $18,000 to cover damages and legal costs, and that settling outside of court was the cleaner option for everyone involved. She left without signing anything. Her composure was mostly intact when she walked out, but her hands weren't quite steady when she picked up her bag from the chair. Tillman looked at me after the door closed. "She'll think about it," he said. "People usually do when the alternative is a courtroom. I drove home and made dinner and sat at the kitchen table and thought about Philip. I called him the next evening and asked him to come over. I told him it was important, that I wasn't sick or in any trouble, but that I needed to sit down with him face to face. He said he'd be there by 7. He came in looking the way he always does, jacket, work boots, the kind of tired that comes from a long day doing something physical. He sat down across from me at the kitchen table, and I put a glass of water in front of him, and then I put the folder in front of him. I told him I was going to show him some things, that they were going to be hard to look at, and that I needed him to let me get through all of it before he said anything. He nodded. I walked him through it the same way Tillman had walked me through it. The photos from Sandra first, the timestamp, the man in the parking lot. The 23-second clip. Then Marvin's report, Clifford Baxter's name, the lease in Atlanta, the timeline showing 2 years of a relationship running alongside the one Philip thought he was in. Then the business letter with the forged signature. Then the joint account opened 4 months before the wedding. He looked at each thing for as long as he needed to. He didn't rush through any of it. I sat across from him and kept my mouth shut and let him process it at his own pace. At some point he asked me if I was sure the signature wasn't his. I told him Tillman had it verified, not a match. He nodded slowly and looked back down at the table. This was the same table where I'd helped him with a science project in the 5th grade, where he'd sat across from me the morning after his mother's funeral and eaten toast and not said much because there wasn't much to say, where we'd had 100 ordinary dinners and a few hard conversations and a lot of mornings that didn't seem like anything at the time, but that I remembered now more clearly than I would have expected. He sat there for a while longer, then he stood up and said he needed to make a call. He went out the back door to the patio. I stayed at the table. I could see him through the window, standing in the backyard in the dark, phone to his ear. He stood very still while he talked, didn't pace, didn't gesture, just stood there. He was out there for about 25 minutes. When he came back and his eyes were red, but his voice was steady. He sat back down across from me. "It's off," he said. I ended it. I told him I was sorry, and I meant that not sorry I'd shown him. Sorry that it was true. Sorry that someone he'd trusted and built plans around had used that trust the way she had. He said he understood why I hadn't come to him sooner. That I'd needed to be sure before I blew up his life he didn't say it like an accusation. He said it the way you say something when you've thought it through and arrived at a place you can live with. We sat there for another hour, didn't talk the whole time. Sometimes that's the right thing. I got up and made coffee and put a cup in front of him and we just sat. The civil case settled 6 weeks later. Nadine agreed to pay $18,000, no court date, no drawn-out process. Tillman handled the paperwork and called me on a Friday afternoon to let me know it was done. I thanked him, hung up, and went back to the supply order I'd been working on. Life kept moving. The trust documents had been finalized before the original wedding date. I got the confirmation on a Wednesday, read it at my desk with coffee, and felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, just steadiness. The kind of feeling you get when something that needed doing is finally done and done right. 38 years of work, protected. Distribution terms set by me on my terms for the people who had actually earned a place in my life. Leonard came to me about a week after everything with Philip became known around the family. He showed up at my office door one morning, no Connie, no build-up. He said he'd known Nadine better than he'd let on, that she'd said some things over the past year that he'd brushed off, things that probably should have flagged something. He wasn't making excuses. He just looked tired and honest standing there in my doorway. I told him I appreciated him saying it. He and Connie moved out 3 weeks later, found an apartment on the east side of Nashville. He's been covering his own bills since I didn't push him out, and I didn't hold anything against him. He's 27. He's figuring it out. That's how it's supposed to go. The house got quieter after that. I won't pretend that part was easy. Quiet houses have a way of making you aware of everything that used to fill them. But it was a different kind of quiet than the months before, cleaner somehow. Philip threw himself into work for a while, which I understood. He'd taken a hit and he was processing it the way men in this family tend to, by keeping his hands busy and his head down. We talked on the phone more than we had in years. Short calls, nothing heavy, just staying in contact. About a month after everything settled, Sandra Colby called me. She said she'd been thinking about it, wondering how things turned out, whether she'd made the right call reaching out to me the way she did. I told her she had, without question. I told her that one phone call on a Tuesday morning had changed the course of my son's life, and that I meant that as the best possible thing I could say. She seemed relieved to hear it. We talked for a few minutes. She asked how Philip was doing, and I told her he was doing better than I would have expected, which was true. A few weekends ago, Philip drove out to the house on a Saturday morning, and we took the truck down to Percy Priest Lake. We hadn't done that in probably 4 years. We had the rods and a cooler with sandwiches, and we sat out on the water for most of the morning without catching much of anything worth keeping. We talked some, not about Nadine or the case or any of it, mostly about the business, about a project he was finishing up, about nothing in particular. The kind of conversation that doesn't have a point except that you're sitting there having it with someone you're glad is in your life. That was the best morning I'd had in a long time. I keep coming back to something Sandra said when I thanked her at the end of that first phone call. She said she'd ask herself what she would want if she were in my position. That was the whole thing. One person deciding that the truth mattered more than the discomfort of delivering it. I try to hold on to that. If you're a father or a grandfather or just a man who has spent decades building something and trusting the people around you, here's what I want you to take from this. The people who genuinely love you don't need access to what you've built. They're not calculating what they stand to gain. They show up on a Saturday morning with nothing to ask for except your time. When someone in your life treats your trust like a transaction, that is information. You are allowed to act on it. Protecting yourself is not selfishness. It is the most responsible thing you can do for the people who actually deserve what you have worked for. I spent a lot of years being the kind of man who kept the peace by not asking too many questions. I told myself that was patience. Looking back, some of it was just avoidance. There is a difference between giving people the benefit of the doubt and handing them the benefit before any doubt even surfaces. Philip is going to be fine. He's 32, he's smart, and he found out the truth before he signed anything permanent that matters. I'm 62 years old. I've got 2 warehouses, a house that finally feels like mine again, and a son I'm having better conversations with now than I have in years. That is enough. That is more than enough. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've been through something like this yourself, say so in the comments. You might be helping somebody who doesn't know yet that they're not alone.